Hey guys, good morning. I hope everybody is had a great weekend. Um, Hope you're able to stay inside a little bit with it being a little rainy. Spend some time with the family and whatnot. This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about the Oregon Trail, right? So last week, if you haven't got a chance to go back and watch Coach Cole or Coach Crouch's videos, you need to. Just like when we're in class, we do things in order for a reason that make more sense. It's going to help processing the information a little bit easier, hopefully, as we go through it. Okay. So last week, Coach Cole talked to you a little bit about the Mexican War, us taking over Texas. Coach Crouch went into a little bit of the Manifest Destiny side of things. Lewis and Clark expedition. And that's kind of where I want to start. So Manifest Destiny, if we go back and we think Manifest Destiny, was the God-given right to expand west, right? John O'Sullivan came up with the term, okay? And so we thought as Americans, if we wanted it, we get to have it, okay? So we wanted to expand west, see what was on the horizon, and expand the United States borders because obviously it's getting a little crowded to the east. So as we expand west, it kind of starts with the Lewis and Clark expedition, okay, and why we want to. In the early 1800s, they traveled through. They kept their diary of everything that they saw, everything that they kind of came in contact with, the pros, the cons, and what to expect. And what that kind of led to was fur trapping and fur trading. So Coach Crouch mentioned it, a little bit more about it. Pioneers would move west in seek of one big thing was beaver, okay, or beaver pelts. All right. So beaver pelts just being beaver fur, okay? For the most part, it was a very hot commodity. People would use it for hats, kind of like you see there in the picture. But in England, it was highly sought after, very rare to find. But now that there were hundreds of thousands of beaver, that's what they kind of went for. Obviously, there were other things as well, but that's kind of what we'll mention in the picture as well. You kind of see from The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio in the bear attack scene. Moving west was an awesome opportunity to make money from an economic standpoint. There was also a lot of danger to it. It's uncharted territory. At that time, you had bears that were not afraid of humans. Okay, so you had the wildlife aspect of it, and what that would bring. What would happen? These pioneers would move west, and they would hunt throughout the wintertime. And they would gather as many pelts as they could, as many furs, because in the summer is when they would typically travel back toward the east and trade all that for supplies for the next season. Okay, so you had some really successful entrepreneurs that would be there that would use Native Americans to their benefit. Okay, because once you're there, it's their land, and so you kind of had to get in good with the Native Americans, and so the Native Americans they adopted some of our cultures and some of our stuff. Obviously, the use of like guns and knives and all those things. But we really benefited from them because we were able to trade and get things such as furs and clothing. But we were able to learn the area a lot more, how to hunt, when to hunt, where just the geographic aspect of the land, we're able to get all that knowledge from them. So the Native Americans really helped us a lot in the fur trading aspect of it, okay? The next thing would be all the fur traders that were there really literally paved the road that would be the Oregon Trail, okay? So all the trails that they would hunt and they would use on a daily basis is actually what we know now as the Oregon Trail through a lot of that territory, okay? So if it wasn't for fur trading, the path to the west would be a lot more difficult. Okay, let's talk about the trail. Okay, the actual Oregon Trail, it started in Independence, Missouri. It stretched a little over 2,000 miles northwest to Oregon City. So you can see Independence, Missouri. As you travel through all of the bullet points, and those are big landmarks that were important throughout the journey. So a lot of those would be, I used to like Fort Laramie, Fort Hall, you've got Independence Rock. Those are major checkpoints to where a lot of the travelers would then stop. You could use that for time to trade with other people if you needed supplies, get to know the land a little bit more. It was important because this journey took about 6 months. Okay, so these major checkpoints along this way were important. Six months is a long time, and when you leave was probably one of the more important things that you had to come up with. So a 6 month time frame. If you left too early, you worry about your cattle and the ox, and do you have enough grass for them to graze on throughout the journey? And if you leave too late in the year, you worry about the winter elements. As you're moving northwest, it gets colder sooner, and you have to worry about any winter conditions, packing enough food, that concept. Okay, so when you leave was really important. How we got there and how we got our stuff there. All right, so this right here, you see parts of a prairie schooner. So prairie schooner were smaller wagons. So these were kind of modified to make the trip a little easier. Okay, so they weighed a little less. They were a little bit smaller, easier for the ox to pull. And you can see here, they're all going to be covered wagons for the most part. You've got the bows throughout the top to cover the wagon bed. You see the jockey box and the tongue. That would be the front of the wagon. So the tongue would extend out to like the ox that would pull the wagon itself. If anybody was actually in the wagon, they would set up in the jockey box. What's interesting is the tire concept to the wagons or the schooner. So they're all wooden tires, but you see iron tire. They would actually take thin pieces of iron to wrap the outer layers of it to make them more durable. Okay, so the elements that they had to go through, whether it's to the fields, whether it's the desert, through the mountain ranges, these were designed to hold up much easier. Okay, now being that it's a smaller wagon, what are we going to take? Okay, so it's a 6 month journey. We've got to figure out what we're going to take, and how we're going to get it there, and what's essential. Okay, we can't take things that we don't really need because we're limited. Okay, especially when it comes to families. So this picture on the bottom left, you got to have food, right? 6 month journey, you got to have food. It was recommended that adults take around 400 pounds of food. And you've got kids that they recommend around 200. So depending on how big your family was, depending on how much food, obviously, you would need to take. So you can see those little bags of that image, which show like oatmeal, corn, beans. They would take, maybe coffee. They've got rice and salt. But a lot of those things would be something you might boil over water, right? Simple items that you would eat with any game that you would hunt along the way, but also really filling foods, okay? Really filling foods that were easier to make. You also see little items such as like shovels, things you might set around the campfire. You've got stuff like this tubs. Then you've got like dining tables, beds, bookshelves. There's even a little piano on there. So you had to take items for when you actually got out west to settle. So in the larger picture, it shows more of those things like family heirlooms. So anything from grandfather clocks to shovels and picks and saws for once you settle. Obviously, you need guns for when you hunt. Rocking chairs, rocking horses. You see the fiddle in the middle. So anything for entertainment purposes, that'd be something nice as well. Another thing that's not on here would be clothing. Okay, clothing is going to be one that's big because the journey itself. So this image here is just what you might see as far as horses and the ox and the schooners and whatnot. But clothing, the men and the women, or the women and the children, would typically walk. A lot of the men would be on horses. So you see this in our wagon train, upwards of around 100 wagons. Typically, each wagon might be a family or a couple of families together, depending. But they would take these schooners, they would meet in Independence, they'd make these huge wagon trains, and as they move through, the men would typically ride the horses. That would be responsible for looking for any like water sources, hunting, being able to look ahead to see where they might want to stop, set up camp, those things. But with women and children, walking, shoes. They might go through like 10 pairs of shoes on this journey. That's another thing you've got to pack, that you've got to have ready. A family of 4, you're talking maybe upwards of 40 pairs of shoes you're trying to find a room in these wagons for. Because you're walking up to 15 miles a day. 15 miles a day, depending on weather conditions and health is another big one. Okay, so if the weather conditions are right, you might be able to move 15 miles in one day, which is awesome. But if it's raining, if it's snowing, if you've got to cross a body of water, you might be limited to maybe 1, 2, 3 miles a day. Okay. Disease was big. Okay. Cholera, dysentery, without going into too much detail. If you drink bad water, if you don't boil the water, it's got bacteria, same with food, and cause a lot of internal issues. So, such as anywhere from stomach cramps to vomiting, diarrhea, in turn, dehydration. Dehydration, if you don't have enough water and you're dehydrated and you're moving through the summer months, can ultimately lead to death. Okay, so there's those things that you've got to hopefully not encounter on the trip. But then you also think if you're walking 10 miles a day, you step on a rock wrong, you break your leg, now you're looking at maybe riding the wagon for the next 2-3 months, okay, with just a splint. When you're in the wagon, now you got to worry about the weight of the wagon and the health of the ox. Okay, so those unforeseen obstacles were huge over this ultimately 6-month journey. Okay, so some of the negatives when it came to the Native Americans. Native Americans are typically very helpful. So they were very helpful in our path over there. We're willing to help and whatnot. But what in turn happened was we would typically overkill like buffalo or bison. So we'd go, it's a lot of meat. And so we go, we hunt, we kill one, we kill two. When there's too much, it's a waste and you're killing off the Native Americans' food source. Okay. Another would be some pioneers would just kind of stop along the way. They go, it's really nice here. Let's just set up shop here and we'll make this home. So they start settling on Indian land that we just thought would now be ours. We're like, oh, that's nice. We'll take it. So those are a couple of the negative things that are going to come from our journey. All right. Let's talk about the Donner Party. This is probably the most famous trip over. You hear the Donner Party, the Donner family. They took a different trip to their destination. So in the top corner, you see George Donner and his wife. They went with their family, and they met with another one, but they left later in the year. They didn't leave until about May. So leaving that late, the big obstacle might be winter conditions. Okay, so the winter conditions, this picture down here kind of shows their journey. A lot of it looks the same, but then they get to that Bridger's Fort, and they're going to take a different route through some mountain ranges, through the desert plains, and ultimately trying to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains to get to their destination in California. So they leave a little bit later. Before they leave, it being later, Mr. Donner reads a book that talks about Hastings Cutoff. It's a shortcut. Okay, it's designed to save them a few weeks on their trip, a few hundred miles, and get them there sooner. So as they get closer and closer to approaching, they find some other members of their wagon train that want to take part. They finally get to the cutoff point, and they break away from the main wagon train, trying to save time. So as they get going, what they don't know is Hastings Cutoff and the author had never been to this area, had never seen it, and ultimately wagons were not designed to go through this. So they spent a lot of their days trying to move rocks and cut down trees just to make a path, and ultimately it slowed them down by about 3 weeks. Okay, so it slows them down by about 3 weeks and a couple hundred miles. So now we're getting closer to that October standpoint where snow can become an issue. So they finally break way through. They're starting to run out of food. They get to the plains of the Sierra Mountains. And once they get down there, what they discover is overnight, a snow blizzard comes through. Big blizzard comes through, dumps 5 feet of snow on an already malnourished or becoming malnourished party. 5 feet of snow up to 60-foot snow drifts, which is where the wind's blowing it into certain areas. And it's just piling up super high. And they become stranded. They become stranded at the base of this mountain. And ultimately, some members end up getting stranded for up to 5 months. Okay. So after a couple weeks, they're out of food. 2-3 weeks into it, they run out of food, and they start to eat anything they can. Okay. So they're eating anything from melted down bones to twigs to dirt, sticks, you name it. They've got to have it. Okay. All their oxen they've killed, they've eaten. It's just them. After a few weeks later, about 15 members decide to go for help. They're going to decide they make their snowshoes out of whatever they can, and they're going to hike over the mountains, get help in California at their destination, march back over the top of the mountain and save everybody. Well, after a few days on this trip, those 15 members, a member dies. Natural causes, he dies, and the party's got to make a decision. Do we risk not being able to make it because we're malnourished and we can't function, or do we eat this person? And what they decided was they're going to eat him. And it kind of comes to cannibalism. Okay, cannibalism, you kind of eat your own. So they eat this person, which is disgusting and gross, but extremely beneficial in the aspect it gives them enough energy to be able to suffice, and most of the members end up reaching the destination point. So from there, they gather a group, couple weeks, they send back over for help. Once they get there, they can only bring back so many. So after multiple trips they're able to save around half. But as they make these trips, they notice that each time, as others die, they discover more and more causes of or types of cannibalism. So it's said that they would label body parts so you wouldn't be eating your kin. So like my wife wouldn't eat me if I died. She could eat you instead, which makes for a very interesting concept and poor planning. So from the front end, leaving late to trying to take a shortcut that unfortunately never been proven, to resourcing our own flesh and blood to survive. So that's one of the biggest stories of it. The Donner Party, they've got their own part of the trail that would then be named after them. And obviously you didn't want to have many taking that route. In turn, as the years went on, less people started taking the Oregon Trail because of things of transportation changed into trains, making things a lot easier, a lot smoother, a lot safer, and much quicker. So whether you were going for more land to grow, or whether you're going for riches, such as in the gold rush, it was very risky to take that trip across. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it makes it a little easier understanding. Look forward to tomorrow when we can, we'll have an assignment posted tomorrow. You'll have a few questions posted with this as well that you'll get to answer. But until then, make sure you've watched the other videos. Make sure you've got everything in and recorded in Google Classroom. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, guys.